Hello everyone, this episode of It's a Wonderful Podcast is brought to you by how terrible Benylin is. I'm one of your hosts, Nolan Dean, and we have another host, Morgan Robinson, as always, and today we're talking about the best version of Sherlock Holmes to date. Morgan, how are you doing?
I'm doing a hell of a lot better than you are. I want anyone listening to this right now to just simply applaud Nolan for coming on when his voice sounds like that.
And now some dogs just started yelling outside my flat. Fantastic.
That is perfectly acceptable for the movie we're talking about, Nolan. What did you pick for this week? By the way, actually, before we get into that, Nolan, how was your Christmas?
Well, clearly I was yelling too much.
You got too intense at the game of charades after dinner, didn't you?
Yes, I may have belted out one too many Mariah Careys.
Some sick karaoke.
Yeah.
You were clearly playing charades wrong because you're not even supposed to speak.
I know.
The game of Monopoly went really well, where you just decided to
destroy the board because I hate
bankrupt
Monopoly.
Yourself. You just bankrupted yourself within the first sort of half an hour.
Look, I'm quite a big board game fan, but even I can't defend how boring Monopoly is.
See, this is where we differ, because I really enjoy it, but I can't play it because I'm not ruthless enough. It's hard. I have loads of Monopolies. I have like 5 different Monopolies.
If I'm gonna play a board game, why not just sit down to a good game of chess? Or
it's a fair point. Did you have a Christmas game of chess?
Not only a Christmas game of chess.
Oh.
It's a wizard chess set.
Do they move? Do they move on their own?
I wish, but it's like from the early 2000s. I used to be the coolest kid in class for bringing this in when I was in primary school.
I believe that. I believe that entirely. But Nolan, we're not even talking about any holiday-related films today. That was last week in our super long, really fun holiday special that you should all go and listen to if you haven't. Where we covered 2 versions of A Christmas Carol. But this week we're not doing that at all. We're staying in Britain for the movie.
And keeping with the board game theme, if you enjoy some Cluedo, you'll like Hound of the Baskervilles.
I imagine you would. Nolan, you obviously picked this one. You picked the 1939 Basil Rathbone one.
Because it's the best version.
Is that the simple reason why you picked that one?
Well, I think it's been a running gag on this show that I say Basil Rathbone's the best Sherlock Holmes.
I mean, whenever Basil Rathbone turns up, and I believe this is Basil Rathbone's 3rd appearance on the show, you always do bring up that he is the best Sherlock Holmes, and now you get to prove why. So why don't you start off the episode by proving why Rathbone over my preferred Peter Cushing?
Well, let me tell you a story about a young man named Sir Arthur Conan Doyle.
Go ahead.
One of the most influential writers, possibly of all time. Because how many mystery stories have you read that could basically be Sherlock fan fiction? You have the quirky detective with his partner solving a murder that no one can solve, and then there's this big convoluted fun way of figuring it out, but then you rewatch it and you think, oh, now I see that clue, now I see that clue, now I see this clue. You know, we're sort of wired to love mystery stories that way, and I think Sherlock Holmes is a big part of that. Him and Poirot, although I don't know if Sherlock Holmes came before Poirot.
Yes, because Holmes is like Victorian, isn't he?
Yeah.
And I think Poirot's more early 20th century, but I'm not so familiar with, or at least I think Poirot's origins lie. Yeah, because Agatha Christie's was Poirot, and Agatha Christie is a lot younger, or more, Agatha Christie is more recent than Arthur Conan Doyle, so yes, I think Poirot came after.
And there are three quintessential British literature characters, I think, of the Holy Trifecta.
The holy trifecta of British literature. It's not Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman.
No, it's
It's
for
not
this,
Jesus, God, and the Holy Spirit.
No, for this,
No.
I believe the most popular characters in British literature are Sherlock Holmes, Harry Potter, and James Bond.
You'd struggle to argue that it was anyone else. You'd struggle to argue that one of those shouldn't make it.
Even if
Into
you
that.
don't like those particular stories, you know who those characters are.
Although, does Ebenezer Scrooge get a?
I'd say he's probably number 5.
Who's 4?
Robin Hood.
Yeah, but is Robin Hood even literature?
Wasn't it based
I
off
suppose,
a book?
yeah. I mean, I suppose it's legend really that I guess was written down.
Oh,
So
it's folklore, isn't it?
yeah.
Scrooge would be up there, though.
Scrooge would be up there. Just calling it back again to last week. But yeah, Sherlock Holmes. I mean, nobody doesn't know who Sherlock Holmes is.
Yep. Every
even-
mystery crime writer out there has at least read or heard of Sherlock Holmes. Even
Of
though they
course
say
they
they're
have.
not ripping him off in their stories, that quirky detective is totally not based off Sherlock Holmes. I'm looking at you, Dirk Gently.
Dirk. Yeah. Dirk Gently was the Netflix thing, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, the Dirk Gently books are by Douglas Adams are pretty cool, but they're like way too ridiculous for my taste.
But everything boils down to basically being copies of Holmes and Watson. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, in fact, you know what? If we were to do because Sherlock Holmes is in the public domain, so anyone could potentially make a movie about him.
True.
I reckon you'd be my Watson.
I mean, I wouldn't be Holmes. I'm not
No,
clever enough.
It's because you're the sensible one that like calms me down.
I have been known to calm people down in the past.
You know, like
That is
me
true.
going on random tirades about story meaning and stuff. That's me Sherlocking, and you're my John Watson, just being like, "Okay, Nolan, yeah."
Yeah, but
see
I
where you
also go on weird tangents about like nonsense that doesn't even relate to usually what we're talking about.
But you also have a blog, and so does John Watson. Well, he kind of not in the original stories.
That's not been active for a long while. Oh no! Don't bring that up. Ugh.
But Sherlock Holmes has always been one of my favorite characters.
Yeah, I mean it's easy to see why. It's easy to see why because he is like surprisingly fun for the thought of a Victorian detective.
Mm-hmm.
He is surprisingly very, very light-hearted in his own way.
Yeah.
Because, he's serious, he's solving murders, but, I mean, there's one scene in particular in this film where this is just Sherlock being a bit silly right now. And I'm all about this.
I feel like I know which part you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm sure you do.
But I'm not sure if because I know you're not a fan of the BBC series Sherlock.
I mean, I've watched like 2 episodes of it. I'm not a fan of modern retellings in general. I think something should be told in its own time.
Are you a fan of the RDJ Sherlocks?
I've never seen them.
Are you a fan of Sherlock Gnomes?
I've never seen that.
Would you be
I've
interested in
watched
watching
Peter
young
Cushing
Sherlock Holmes from the 80s?
Young Sherlock Holmes.
That movie's surprisingly fun.
Who stars in young Sherlock Holmes? Anyone of note?
I think it was like a bunch of unknown actors at the time,
Okay.
but it's
No.
got like a really Spielbergian feel to it.
Well, it was the 1980s, so of course it did. Was it not just Stranger Things, but without demogorgons? It was instead just murderers
Yeah,
or criminals.
and when you think of Sherlock Holmes stories, I think Hand of the Baskervilles is probably the first one. You think it's easily the most iconic.
It is. Is it your favourite?
It's not my favorite, but it's a very notable one in my book. For me, I need any story that has Moriarty in it because I just love that relationship.
Okay, fair enough.
Like the relationship with people say Batman and the Joker are a great hero-villain relationship. Sherlock and Moriarty, like, to me, is that, but taken up to another level. Moriarty or Sherlock is kind of what I would want the Riddler to be in a movie, not Jim Carrey in tights.
What? No, not Jim Carrey in tights at all. That's a good point, though. I like that. I like how Moriarty would be like the Riddler. Because everything's very well thought out all the time. And
but Moriarty's not even in Hand of the Baskervilles.
No, he isn't. No,
Which some people would be surprised at, because you'd think with him being Sherlock Holmes' archenemy that he'd be in a lot of stories, but I think he's only in like one or two in the original ones.
I think it clearly shows how much of an impact he had in those two particular stories, or however many there were. I am not an expert. But yeah, Hound of the Baskervilles is the more sort of... It's the first Holmes story that you think of when you hear Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes, oh yeah, Hound of the Baskervilles. I know that.
And it's been told in so many different ways, but it's always boiling down to the one thing. Sir Henry has found a giant hound in where he lives.
He has.
The hound has murdered somebody.
It has.
And then it all turns out just to be a hoax for someone else who is the murderer.
Yep.
It's been told in a lot of different ways, though.
Look, it's a relatively simple mystery. It's a very fun. It's a very sort of, not necessarily fun, but it's very engaging to watch because it's not overly complex. It doesn't want to be overly complex. The best scenes in this particular movie are towards the end when Sherlock is sort of okay. When he really starts to think, when he really starts to put stuff together. It's like in any good Scooby-Doo episode, when they really start to put stuff together at the end. Is everybody's favourite scene.
That's also a big thing onto why I love the Sherlock Holmes character, is that I've always taken him as someone who he doesn't really care about the people involved in a case.
Not at all.
He cares about being right.
It. He cares about the method. He doesn't care. He does it for his own purpose. He doesn't do it to help people. He does it to like... He does it because he wants to feel successful in himself.
I firmly believe that if there was like a story with Sherlock Holmes and Adolf Hitler, and Adolf Hitler was not guilty in the story, Sherlock would be going out of his way to prove that. And just the thought of that makes me laugh.
Admittedly, that's terrifying. But
yeah, Sherlock's such a big
idea.
egomaniac, though.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it is. I think it's why Cumberbatch makes a decent actor for Sherlock, because of course he also plays like Doctor Strange,
massive
who
egomaniac.
is also very egomaniac. Maybe Cumberbatch himself is. Who knows? I don't know the man personally.
Doctor Strange, I think, is way less likable than Sherlock, though. He's kind of just a bell end.
Yes, he is. He is. He's not. Yeah, that's all I've got to say. Sherlock has fun, and Basil Rathbone, your favourite Sherlock, does have. He's constantly got a charm.
He does, but he never overdoes it. He doesn't go to the point of being like campy or ridiculous.
No, and I mean, okay, we're bringing up the word campy. My favourite Sherlock Holmes is Peter Cushing.
I'm guessing his take is quite campy.
it was Hammer. It was Hammer Studios, from the good people that brought you Christopher Lee as Dracula, bring you Christopher Lee as Henry Baskerville.
Christopher Lee would have been a great choice for Moriarty, I think.
Well, he played Henry Baskerville instead. He may have, I don't know, he may have played Moriarty at some point.
That seems like a role that would be made for Christopher Lee.
But Peter Cushing was Sherlock Holmes. Hound of the Baskervilles was 1960.
So we could still talk about it theoretically.
We could at some point, but we're not talking about it today. We're talking about 1939, and what I think this one does really well and better than the one I'm familiar with, the 1961, is that you get a feel of how grim Dartmoor is.
It's way more eerie, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just the opening of Baskerville alone with like the shadows and the fog. It feels like a theatre set.
Yeah. I mean, in Hammer films, obviously, everything's quite bright. And yeah, sure, it's eerie because there's enough smoke effects and enough weird-looking things to make it that way, but you don't have the mood of just bleak, grim, awful isolation that you do in this version. And again, the black and white really helps, as it often does, but it's clearly, emphasised by certain things that are going on as well in the production design and whatever it may be, to just emphasise this sort of, really, this is in the middle of nowhere. There is this supernatural hound going around murdering people, and please be terrified. That's exactly what it is.
Mm-hmm. And something that remains consistent in every version of the story I've seen, they've done sort of variations of it, but the hound is always just a regular dog.
Yeah, I mean, it's nothing overly special. It's not like Sirius Black in Prisoner of Azkaban, where he is a particularly nasty-looking dog.
Yeah.
This is a hound. Yeah, okay, it's violent. It kills, but yeah, it's all about the locale. In this one,
and in the most recent retelling I remember of this story, the fog was like some kind of hallucinogen that made it look like the hound.
That's nice. I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, that's in the Cumberbatch Sherlock when they did Hound of the Baskervilles.
Oh, see, I might like that. I should maybe watch that one. I like that. No, I like that a lot. That, bringing it back to Batman, that reminds me of Scarecrow.
Yeah.
Who would use hallucinogenic
Sir Henry
gas.
Baskerville in that. It's not like a big rich guy like he is in this one. He's just he's a guy you'd expect to run into at a construction site.
Oh, see, that ruins it though. He's supposed go to an old manor.
And I'm pretty sure Baskerville is like a B&B or something.
No, see, that's where it ruins it. This is supposed to be a weird, old, stately home in Dartmoor. Why are you making it into a bed and breakfast? For God's sake! Yeah, this is what I really liked about this particular version, is that it really felt very of its time, and that's what I love about these sort of things. But it really adds a charm to the film itself anyway, as well as adding all this sort of all the grimness it adds, and the sort of not sophistication in terms of this movie can't be watched by everyone, but a sophistication into these characters are supposed to be kind of hoity-toity to a point. They're supposed to be kind of upper class and formal, which it just works better that way in stories like this. I don't know.
It does, and I do prefer that in this one, mostly because, like, Dartmoor, the manor, feels kind of like a character in itself.
Oh, absolutely, it is. I mean, I don't know if you'd ever want to go to Dartmoor. Dartmoor's in like Devon.
I don't know. I have like
Um,
I have a weird. Maybe it's my writer brain, but I have a weird thing for like creepy deserted towns where hauntings might have happened.
well, that's what, yeah. I mean, it's just moors themselves are creepy because they are just basically hills of land where there is no light and no nothing. And at night, it reminds me of An American Werewolf in London, where they are walking through the Yorkshire moors, and that's where they get bitten by the wolf. Moors are not nice places. No,
I used to get in trouble for when I was a kid. I lived near a forest, and it was sort of a moor kind of thing, and I used to get in trouble for going in there at night. But I was so curious about it.
Go in there during the day, or go in there with somebody else.
I
Don't
went
go in
by
on your own.
myself with a torch.
Yeah, see, that's dangerous. But curiosity, and there's nothing wrong with curiosity. I'm sure it inspired you plenty to whether it's in writing or whatever it may be. But yeah, it can definitely help to creep you out a bit, especially if you're going at night in the middle of nowhere with no light other than a torch. That's a flashlight.
I do have my own little detective series, but I think we'll talk about that maybe at the end of the episode, so I don't get dragged off.
Oh, I see. No, yeah, of course we can.
But the thing, I do say I think Basil Rathbone's the best Sherlock, but really what I mean is he's just my favorite. The role of Sherlock, I think, it's sort of like theater. It's kind of like, even if it's more like movies, where it's kind of like James Bond in a way. Or even Batman, no one owns the role. Each actor can sort of bring their own take to it.
You'll be getting some hate from anybody who may listen to that. People have strong opinions on who holds the role of James Bond and Batman.
But who holds the role is just their favourites. I've met people they're adamant that their favourite Bond is Pierce Brosnan, whereas for me it's like, no, Sean Connery.
Yeah.
But
fortunately I am the same as you.
But when you think about it, it's kind of like theatre. No one really owns a role. They each bring their own take to it. And I like that Basil Rathbone, he kind of represents the 30s, still a bit of an upper class douche kind of guy, but has that charm to him.
Yeah.
Which is weird, because the other movies we've seen him in, he's played a villain.
Oh, Basil Rathbone, yeah. Basil Rathbone is he's a tall guy. He's quite an intimidating presence. Which, especially when you're sort of comparing that to other versions of Sherlock that you know, whether it is Peter Cushing, whether it's Cumberbatch, whether it's Robert Downey Jr.
Something in common with a lot of Sherlock actors is that they've all played villains at some point.
Oh, definitely they can all play villains, but I don't think any are as quite as sort of naturally intimidating as Basil Rathbone, because Basil Rathbone looks like Christopher Lee, kind of, and Christopher Lee was terrifying. And yeah, he has played villains in the 2 previous movies we have talked about with him in. But in this, it was kind of nice to see him. Not only, I mean, is Sherlock a hero? Not in a traditional sense. He's a protagonist.
I do think I think he's good deep down, but he just doesn't. He doesn't like to admit it.
He's good deep down, but I mean, it's not. To bring it back to previous Basil Rathbone films, it's not like Basil Rathbone was Errol Flynn.
Fair point.
In this movie, he's not. Hooray! I have won the day. This is me. I'm the hero. It's not like that. He's just like, yeah,
he cares
I've
about
done
being
it.
right.
Yeah. Yep, that's what I do. Bye, next one.
That's what I think's interesting about the character of Sherlock in every version. he's usually defined not by what he does himself, but by the supporting characters around him, how he treats them and such. Like his relationship with
Yeah.
Watson, how he treats
Yeah.
his oh, fuck, I keep forgetting her name.
Or his landlady.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know her name either.
Mrs. Hudson.
Mrs. Hudds, there you go. We're not very good on Sherlock Holmes. I do apologise, everyone.
And there's always the running joke like, I'm your landlady, I'm not your housekeeper.
It's very true, though. Sherlock needs to stop expecting this woman to do things.
Yeah,
Damn, do it for yourself, Sherlock. God damn it. But you brought up Watson, and before I forget, Mustache Hall of Fame of mustaches, mustache, Hall of Fame. That's my new jingle for the Mustache Hall of Fame. We still don't have one, so I just keep having to do that whenever one comes up. Nigel Bruce as Dr. John Watson goes straight into the Mustache Hall of Fame without question. Oh God, yes.
John Watson has always had a mustache. The Sherlock series even jokes about it, that he doesn't have a mustache for a while.
Well, this particular mustache, Nigel Bruce. Yeah, congratulations, Nigel. Congratulations, John Watson in general. You are in the Mustache Hall of Fame, and forever will you stand against Errol Flynn and Vincent Price and whoever else is in there as now. I've still not created an entire list for some reason. I will need to do that very soon, otherwise I'm likely to forget who is in the Mustache Hall of Fame, and no one wants that.
Mm-hmm.
New additions! Yay, back to our regularly scheduled programme.
And the thing Watson, I think, needs to be great is that even though him and Sherlock bicker a lot and get in fights a lot, you have to buy that they are friends. Otherwise, their whole relationship does not work.
I think you also have to buy that Sherlock thinks he is way better than Watson.
Oh, definitely. They need to have good chemistry for it to work.
He looks down on Watson so much. Everything is just like, yes, John. Come on, now. I figured this out 10 minutes ago. None more sort of stupidly so is that the case than in the scene I mentioned briefly earlier in Hound of the Baskervilles, where Sherlock decides to dress up as an old man.
Is that the scene you were talking about?
Yeah, that's the scene I was talking about.
And he shows up at the manor. He
shows up. He's not been there yet. He shows up. Watson's gone. Watson's walking around the moor, and this old man comes, and for some reason, Watson tells him that his name is Sherlock Holmes, and then the disguise comes off, and Sherlock just starts laughing, and I feel so bad for Watson all the time because he just seems like he's the loyal guy. Like, even though his friend is very me, he's very egocentric. Watson's always still there, so I just really appreciate that. Even though Sherlock is kind of mean to him sometimes and plays tricks on him like this.
I just realised if we're to be the Sherlock and Watson, I can't be Sherlock because I'm not egotistical.
Well, I mean, neither am I, so it's not really fun,
Well,
is it?
we're going to cast a new Sherlock for you. Raoul is going to be your Sherlock.
Oh, that's harsh. Raoul, notice I didn't say that. That wasn't me, right? Okay.
Hey, Raoul, you get to play the lead role.
Go after Nolan. Wasn't me.
I'll just be the Moriarty, and I'll constantly get in fights with Raoul.
Oh, I would pay good money to see that fight.
Hey, if you see me slick back this hair and put on a suit, I'll look like Moriarty.
I mean, you wouldn't not look like Moriarty, to be fair. To be fair to you. I would take, yeah. But, going back to what I was said, like, I really appreciate that about Watson, but also, like, the opposite. I appreciate the fact that Sherlock Holmes can have a bit of fun with himself.
Makes him likable.
Yeah, it's what if he didn't have this sort of bit of quirkiness to him, a bit of I kind of just want to be a bit. Yes, I'm the biggest man in the room, but I'm also going to have fun with it. I'm not a stick in the mud. I'm not stuck up, really.
Unlike, and I'm sorry to say this, that's how I feel about Poirot.
Poirot doesn't joke. Poirot would be in the Mustache Hall of Fame, for sure.
He would, but when you compare him to Sherlock, I just find him kind of a boring character.
Yeah, I mean, he's much more serious.
I don't read Poirot novels for the character of Poirot. I read them for the mystery.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the mystery in something like Murder on the Orient Express is more. I think the actual mystery is more interesting than something like Hound of the Baskervilles, because Hound of the Baskervilles is really just a simple case.
Yeah, but whereas Sherlock really relies on the relationship between him and Watson.
Exactly. And that's exactly what this movie does really well, because I really like the scenes between the two of them. I don't know how many Holmes and Watson, they did together. I'm sure it was quite a lot.
They did about 10 or 15, I think.
Yeah.
A DVD set.
Which makes sense. I mean, they're clearly a very good pairing.
And I know they did make those movies.
Especially, yeah. You can crank those movies out like that. Again, reminds me of Hammer Studios.
If we wanted to, I could come down to Manchester again and we could film a Sherlock Holmes movie.
In theory, we could do that. It would be very poor.
Most likely.
It will not be a good movie. Because, I don't know, it just wouldn't be.
You could get your mum to be Mrs. Hudson. Put her in a wig.
But we could do that. Let's not, though.
Yeah.
Let's not. Let's leave it up to professionals, who can make far better Sherlock Holmes movies, like this one, for example. But yeah, I really like the scenes between Rathbone and Nigel Bruce. I'm sure they must have had some sort of real life friendship, because it is very, very natural, their chemistry. Yeah, that I don't get with Peter Cushing's Sherlock, to be honest, the level of chemistry with his Watson, who I even forget the name of his Watson in Hound of the Baskervilles. Peter Cushing's version. So yeah, that for me was greatly improved on in.
I'll like
this
any
one.
version of Sherlock Holmes as long as he has good chemistry with Watson. That's the key.
I mean, yeah, and like you said before, that's the key of a good Sherlock story. It doesn't need to be an overly complex mystery, as Hound of the Baskervilles proves.
Even when Sherlock, the show, was starting to get way more complex with its mysteries, that's kind of when it started to lose steam.
Yeah. It's understandable, really. Once you start going over complex with anything in terms of story, it alienates people because they don't want to think that much.
Like, with mystery stories, I can't remember which writer said this, but they have to be complex enough to draw you in, but not so much that you feel like you can't solve it by yourself. You need to, like, a good mystery, I think, should be like a good twist.
Exactly.
Kind of story. You should be able to see the breadcrumbs that lead up to it, not just get to the end of a story and then bam, there's your thing.
Exactly. And let's bring it back to Scooby-Doo. And Scooby-Doo, Nolan's very ill. And let's bring it back to Scooby-Doo, where Scooby-Doo does that perfectly. So, yay. Just
The
wanted
original
to mention.
series does anyway.
Exactly, that's what I'm talking about. It just sets the breadcrumbs, and you know who the person is, or you have one of
It's
two
always
people.
the rich white guy.
Of course it is. Blame rich white men for everything. Literally, though. Literally.
They're the worst.
Yeah, but it's the same thing. They didn't need really complex mysteries to draw people in. No, they had good chemistry within the characters there, and they let you try and solve the mystery yourself. Kind of what this one does as well.
How would you say mystery ranks in terms of your favourite genres?
I like a mystery. I don't know, because sometimes I'm a strange movie watcher, because I go through phases of enjoying certain types of movies. Like one week I can be on like, I'm gonna watch mythological movies. One week I can be like, I'm gonna watch really weird, gory horror movies. Like, and then it varies really a lot. I enjoy mystery films. It's usually about a performance for me. If there's a great performance in there that I can attach myself to, I think of, Humphrey Bogart in certain movies, The Maltese Falcon, which we did on this, and yeah, okay, everybody's kind of great in something like The Maltese Falcon. I don't know, but yeah, I think it needs a performance for me. I think a mystery film is not so much about the mystery itself, because I've said this before. I watch movies from kind of an art standpoint, a picture standpoint, rather than from a story standpoint. So if something creates a particular image in my head, if a shot does that, or a performance can change, and if whatever a performance does in a movie is more important to me than the actual journey of the movie, if the performance is, I'm trying to explain something. I really am explaining it very, very badly.
No, I get what you mean. You go. I think you'd be a fan more of visual storytelling than like actual like dialogue based storytelling.
Yeah, no,
Like,
yeah,
you'd
that's.
go for something over like a Stanley Kubrick than opposed to like an Aaron Sorkin scripted
I would,
drama.
I would every day.
Whereas I'm
that
the
is what I'm.
complete opposite. Dialogue is like
Yeah.
my thing.
Exactly. It's very interesting, but yeah, ultimately, if I can somehow get this train of thought completely back on the tracks from falling over into the river, mystery films do not need a good mystery for me. It needs to have a mystery film has a mystery in it.
Even the Harry Potter books at their core are mysteries.
The most basic mystery is still a mystery. You don't need complexity. You just need to know what you're telling and know how to capture that, whether it's on film or in a performance or with a musical score or whatever. You just need to know how to capture that, and I will be happy, regardless of what the story is. Basically.
Well, I'm pretty sure you have the Sherlock Holmes stories.
I do. I own a big volume of them. I have not read them.
They're a fun read.
I want to get into this book, because I do have like a big, thick, hardback, complete Sherlock Holmes thing. That's a really nice sort of. It's a really nice book, actually.
So once I get
I
on a
should.
Sherlock binge, I can't stop. I watch every version of Sherlock Holmes I can find.
Perhaps this will be you then for the next, however long, for the rest of the holiday period. Instead of watching, mind you, we're post Christmas now, so maybe nobody's watching holiday movies anymore.
I'll stick on young Sherlock Holmes.
Do that. Yeah.
Highly underrated
like
movie
it.
that. But for you mentioned like you love visual storytelling. I get it. You must love those shots of the Hound.
I do. They're my favourite things. My favourite things are the wide shots of the moor just looking creepy as hell, and the Hound just going about the Hound stuff.
A moor, could that be similar to a swamp?
You can set it in a swamp. The Hound doesn't want you in his swamp.
The Shrek of the
The
Baskervilles.
The Shrek of the Baskervilles.
Shrek Holmes.
Yes, you've figured it out. Sherlock Holmes. Put Shrek with a pipe and a deer stalker.
If you want to do a Shrek reboot, DreamWorks, do that.
I wouldn't say no. I wouldn't say no to Shrek solving mysteries with Donkey.
There we go, guys. We've solved the Shrek reboot craze.
I'm about it. Oh yeah, I forgot Shrek was being rebooted. God damn it. God damn it. Why have you reminded me of that? Oh, life. Life and all its misery.
Yeah, so I'm curious what you think of the overall conclusion of this mystery, because most of this movie is really just the relationship between Holmes and Watson and some really cool shots of the Hound. But the conclusion I've always been a little conflicted on, whereas like it's just a random convict, it's not like a monster story, where I was kind of, when you hear about this story, The Hound of the Baskervilles, you expect to see like a sort of monster.
Yeah,
thing.
I kind of agree with you on that. I would be way more into it if it turned out that the Hound was a spiritual dog of legend. That would be impossibly cool to me. Yes, okay, it goes for the realism, and no, it was just this dude. It was this dude over here. It was this guy.
As much as I'd love to see
to jail
that,
with him.
It wouldn't work with a Sherlock story.
No, it wouldn't work.
Unless you
but I
did
just like
a Sherlock
ghosts.
fantasy story, and who knows, someone might do that.
I just like ghosts. That's my thing. So yeah, I think I agree with you on that. That I would like something like I would like a mystery like this, where there is a legendary spirit to actually be a legendary spirit. That's what some Scooby-Doo stuff does really well, is when it's actually a thing. On the very rare occasion, it's actually real. It's nice.
And after seeing Rathbone, would you be curious to see any of his other ones?
I would be very curious to see many of Basil Rathbone's other ones. I think, yeah. I thought he was absolutely great. I see why he is your favourite completely. Me just being a big Peter Cushing fan. It's not necessarily a big Peter Cushing as Sherlock Holmes fan. It's just a Peter Cushing fan. But yeah, I would go and watch these. I want to see who Rathbone's Moriarty is.
He's a pretty cool dude. Who was Cushing's Moriarty? Because like
no
Cushing
idea.
is pretty menacing.
I've no idea. The only one I've watched of Cushing is Hound of the Baskerville. It's the only thing I know.
I think it'd be hard to find an actor who can out-menace Peter Cushing.
Maybe it was Lee. I don't know. Let me have a look. Because Christopher Lee played Henry Baskerville in...
I'm sure it was a different actor
in their
playing
version.
his Moriarty.
Let me...
Oh man, imagine if Price was his Moriarty.
Unless... If Vincent Price... No, I don't think he is. Unless Peter Cushing didn't even do many Sherlock Holmes. I don't even know. I'm making myself sound absolutely ridiculous. because I just kind of don't know anything right now. Let's have a look. So, what do we have here? We have. Where's Hound of the Baskervilles? Is there? Hound of the Baskervilles is from 1959 as well. So I got that wrong, as well. God damn it! No, I think they just did. Did they just do Hound of the Baskervilles? They must have just done Hound of the Baskervilles. That can't be right.
Maybe Cushing just didn't want to do that role.
I don't know. I'm making myself sound like a complete amateur, but
A fool.
A fool. I often make myself sound like a fool. I don't know. Post-Christmas has got to me. I've become insane, and I've eaten way too much food, and I'm having too much of a good time for my brain to properly function. So I apologise to every listener who was just hating me for the last 2 minutes.
He's been at the communion wine again.
I have. That's precisely what I've been doing. I've been going down to the church and drinking it all.
Just like the vicar that you are.
Am I a vicar? I am a vicar, I suppose, aren't I now? Vicar. I will never forgive people when I got ordained as a wedding officiant if they asked me if I was a priest.
No, I asked if you were a vicar.
Yeah, but I mean priest, vicar, minister, reverend, they're all the same title, really. I mean, they're not, but you know what I mean. They're all the same position. And I've just offended a bunch of religious people. Nolan, please, just wrap up this episode before I completely go insane.
Well, I think overall with this movie you have great chemistry by Sherlock and Watson. Basil Rathbone's a great Sherlock. It's got a really cool little eerie setting. And if you're a Sherlock Holmes fan, even if you're just a fan of the BBC series or the Robert Downey Jr. movies, or God forbid you're looking forward to that one with Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly.
Yeah, which isn't that out now as well?
Yeah.
As we are, maybe not as we're recording this, but by the time it comes out,
probably
by the time this episode comes out, I think that's actually out.
Someone described it to me as Step Brothers with Sherlock Holmes, and I was like, I literally could not think of a worse combo.
I have seen the trailers before the last couple of movies that I went to the cinema to see.
Yeah,
and it just... I mean, I don't like Will Ferrell anyway. I quite like John C. Reilly. I don't have anything against John C. Reilly. I just can't stand Will Ferrell at all in anything. So
I'm sorry to our American listeners, but I think Sherlock Holmes kind of needs to be played by a British dude.
Of course it does. And, obviously, I get what they're going for.
They're making fun of it. Yeah.
Of course they are. They're going to be completely stupid. You're not going into this thinking, it's going to be a legitimate Sherlock movie. It's not. It's going to be fun and funny and silly and stupid, and I'm sure it will be. And I'm sure loads and loads of people will love it. I just don't happen to like that style of comedy. So, it's not one for me, but I'm sure it'll be wildly popular.
In the meme category, maybe.
Oh, certainly, I would expect, considering, don't they end up taking a selfie with Queen Victoria or something like that? It's literally like that.
Those words hurt me.
Yeah, imagine what Queen Victoria would be thinking. Queen Victoria would behead them. No, she wouldn't. She was quite pleasant.
She would not be amused, though.
She would not. Oh, no. She would not be amused. That's a great note to finish on that, Nolan, I think.
Indeed.
I think we've said all we needed to say about Sherlock. It's been a nice little discussion on Sherlock Holmes, to be honest, this. More of a kind of general Sherlock Holmes discussion than this actual film, but I think it went nicely.
To be honest, you can never really pinpoint, a particular episode or a film of Sherlock when talking about it. You just talk about the characters.
Yeah, and that's ultimately what it's all about. It's not about the mystery. It's about Sherlock and Watson themselves. Guys, thank you for listening to another episode of It's a Wonderful Podcast. If this is your first time listening to It's a Wonderful Podcast, I do hope I haven't put you off of listening to more episodes.
You've made me feel slightly better.
Maybe
See,
Nolan,
my voice is clearing up a bit.
Nolan's voice is clearing up. It's all gone very well. Episode 36. This has been focusing on The Hound of the Baskervilles from 1939 with Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce. Nolan, plug any stuff you need to plug or do anything you are doing. Fun stuff, do things, fun stuff.
Well, I don't really have anything to plug now, but I guess I can tell you a bit about my sort of take on a detective story.
You can, because you wanted to do that anyway, and I forgot.
Well, I think I was writing this around the time we met. Remember Tommy Taylor?
I do remember that.
Yeah.
Yes, that took a backseat for Moonflower.
Yeah, I've still got that character in the back of my mind, and he goes to the same school as the main kid in Moonflower, so it's all in the same universe.
Oh, you're creating a universe.
But I'm doing it in the Stephen King way, not the Marvel way.
Fair enough. Both are successful.
But, no, Tommy Taylor was like my take on the detective, but instead of making the detective the quirky one, I decided to make the partner the quirky one.
Okay.
Did you ever watch a show called Fillmore when you grew up?
Oh, I've heard of that. I don't think I ever watched it. I've definitely heard that name, though.
That was an animated series, like, back in the early 2000s, which was basically a riff on 70s cop shows. But it's set inside a middle school, and they take all the crimes so seriously.
Okay.
This is stuff like someone stole the school answers to a quiz.
Yeah.
And they treat it so seriously, and it's hilarious.
Okay, and that's kind of the vibe of Tommy Taylor. Do we call him Thomas?
Nah, he prefers Tommy.
Do we call him Tom?
Nah. But
do we call him T-Dog?
Him and his partner, who I called, which is this... I don't know how big you are into mystery characters, but her name's Monica Jupiter. And if you can figure out what that's a parody of, all the more power to you.
Monica Jupiter.
Which detective has a planet as her surname? That's your clue.
Oh, God. Ah, okay. I get you. I know exactly who you're talking about. I'm not going to say it. I'll let the listeners try and figure it out for themselves, although they probably got it far quicker than I got it.
But my idea was basically like, okay, if you're going to do a mystery story, because they've all been done in so many ways, you got to make it unique. So what if you make the partnership the focus of it, and have the partner, in this case Monica, get framed for something she didn't do?
Ooh.
Tommy has to figure out who solved the crime and save her, and then that's how they become detective partners.
I like it.
I've never seen it been done like that.
I like it. I'm about it. Nolan, your creative mind never fails to impress. Your choices for picks for this show are sometimes good.
And you know what's hilarious about the whole Tommy Taylor thing?
What?
That takes place in the same universe where a little girl wished for her favorite character to come alive.
Yeah.
That's what my mind is like.
Your mind should be something that never dies. Because
hopefully not.
Hopefully I will be immortal. But if you pray for immortality, you'll turn into Voldemort, and no one wants that.
Nah, no one really wants that. Yikes.
No one wants that at all.
Ralph Fiennes, though, would probably be a good Moriarty now that I think about it.
Isn't Ralph Fiennes Moriarty in Holmes and Watson?
Is he?
I think he might be.
I'm going to look this up, and I really hope you're wrong.
I legitimately think he might be.
Oh no! Oh no! No! Son of a bitch!
He is, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yes. What an incredible way to wrap up this conversation on Sherlock Holmes.
Do yourself a favour, go watch this Hound of the Baskervilles movie, and maybe watch Young Sherlock Holmes as well. It's really fun.
Yeah, just do that. Guys, thank you for listening to a very sort of we have colds and are quite ill episode of It's a Wonderful Podcast, episode 36 on the Hound of the Baskervilles 1939. Follow the podcast on Twitter at It's a Wonderful One, hashtag the same, to see all to talk to us about whatever we're talking about or whatever movie we're discussing. Tell us if you enjoyed the show. Tell us if you didn't enjoy the show. Tell us what you would like to see. And just, follow on the Twitters for all the latest goings on. You can also find the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Podbean, Castbox, other places as well, where you may find all your audio podcasts, and leave that nice 5-star rate and review if you're feeling generous post Christmas time, which I hope you are. And if you do that, we will read out your nice special review on the show, and it will be very nice and very loving, and we love to appreciate people, and we love being appreciated. And if this makes any sense, I am slightly going insane in this episode. I do realise that I kind of need Nolan to stop me soon, but not before I tell you all to follow me on Twitter if you would, at the Purple Dawn, with a 3 instead of the E in the, because 3 is the magic number. Nolan, save me.
Follow me at NolanDean27 on Twitter, and do everything else Morgan told you. I think that's it for today, guys.
It is, Nolan. First of all, bye from me, guys. I hope you do tune in to more episodes after this hellhole of my performance that today has been.
It was the same for me. It's this damn cold.
Nolan, see us out.
Elementary, my dear Robinson.
Bye.